So thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are going to spend the next year looking at how you can kickstart your grade 2-3 year with POPEY. And I am co-presenting with Jen, my lovely teacher consultant colleague up in the Shuswap area, and I'm in Vancouver. And we will get started. So if you've been to one of our workshops before, I might be familiar to you, but I'm Lisa and I'm the program manager and teacher consultant. And I helped launch POPEY back in 2014. So we're coming up on our 8th birthday in January, I think, which is amazing. I guess we're edging out of primary if we're going by 8 years old, hey? We're heading into our intermediate years. And so Jen is in her 3rd year with POPEY. And we've got Nadia here as our tech support. And if you need any help, you can definitely let her or one of us know in the chat box. And so the handouts are available on our website. If you're familiar with the website, you know we've got lots of resources to support literacy, the core competencies, classroom practice and assessment, and lots of stuff there, printables, resources, videos, things for you to use in support of your students. And in the Zoom session today, there is closed captioning available at that bottom toolbar. So what we're looking at in the next hour is intentionally planning routines and structures to give our students that consistency that they need at the beginning of the year to feel safe and comfortable and like they belong in our classroom. And so some considerations for planning out our learning space, the environment in our classroom and the layout, how we design our learning activities, and some of those routines and practices to give our students as many opportunities as they can to gain independence and practice building up their skills. Mainly, of course, the focus for today is literacy skills. So we'll be doing that with a blend of theory and practice and some active engagement. So we'll share some current best practice research on high impact and successful strategies and routines that you can use with your students. Jen and I will do a couple of demonstrations and modeling skills and strategies in action, and then give you time to ponder, reflect, chat, and think about how some of these might work for you in your classroom with the students that you're supporting this year, and whatever your role might be, whether you're enrolling or non-enrolling. And so if you are just joining us, we invite you to share in the chat box where you're joining us from today, and also what you're teaching this year. If you're a classroom teacher or non-enrolling, that's always helpful for us to know. And if you want to give us a weather report too, feel free to let us know. We presented on Tuesday afternoon and it was terribly gray and rainy and cloudy and overcast here in Vancouver. So the sunshine today is a welcome change. And we wanted to get started, first of all, checking in on how you're doing. So this is our CAT scale from 1 to 9. And we ask you, oh, that's great. More sunshine in Kimberly. Thanks, Meg. How are you feeling today? We're just in officially week 2 of school. Probably people are feeling maybe a little tired, still adjusting to the work after summer off. But we invite you to have a look, see which cat you most identify, and then put the corresponding number into the chat box. And depending on what the majority, how this shakes out, that will let Jen and I know how we should adjust our presentation skills. A 3 or a 9, yes, Julie, I can relate. I'm very envious of anybody who's feeling like a 1.
Yeah. I just can't get over like the faces, like number 4. So cute.
Yeah, number 7 looks kind of shocked and horrified, maybe a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Mishy's a 7. Okay, yes. So whatever number you are, do what you need to take care of yourself in the session for sure. But good just to pause and acknowledge where we're at and where we're feeling sort of in that zone from 1 to 9.
I think there's lots of 3s, so we're going to have to keep it really upbeat.
Okay. We will. We will do our best. Thank you. Yes. All right. So launching in with some of those routines and strategies to really create with intention, a responsive and caring classroom. And so some of the research that we really like to share, especially at the beginning of a new school year, comes out of the book, The First 6 Weeks of School. So it's cited down there at the bottom. It's also at the back of our handout on the sources page. And as we all know, especially coming out of COVID, that the social curriculum, all of that stuff, SEL, core competencies are so important and foundational. And those really are what we need to notice and support to be in place for students to then also be academically successful and socially successful. So how they're learning is as important as what they're learning. And especially in primary, we want to make sure we give them a lot of opportunity for play and choice. And that's a really good way to motivate, empower, and engage them in all sorts of ways, not just their minds, but their bodies as well. Also having that respect and the regard for their developmental abilities and their cognitive growth, and that we can do that through social interactions and all of those opportunities in free play and centers, even recess and lunch for them to solve differences and conflict resolution and share opinions and navigate all of those little hiccups that can happen at any grade, but we're laying those foundational skills for sure in primary. And then really being consistent and strong and predictable and routine with those structures that we set up in the guidelines, how we do things in our class, the norms and the expectations. So having the students know what's coming helps them feel safe and they can relax and really lean into the learning instead of being worried, not knowing what's next or where they're going next, what the shape of the day is going to look like, or when they might have a chance to talk to their friend or get up and move. So sharing that shape of the day and building in the routines and expectations is really helpful for them to stay calm and relaxed so that they're primed for learning as well. Class meetings are a really wonderful way to build community, share reflections and connections, and again, another time that we can model problem solving strategies for any of those little skirmishes we might see in the classroom. And then always building in that gradual release of responsibility, putting more responsibility on the students slowly over time as we give them structure, support, modeling, demonstrations, and examples of those literacy skills and strategies we're wanting them to teach, what good readers do when they're reading, what writers do when they're thinking about writing and engaging with stories, what that can look like, and how they can have some stretch goals for where they're at now, but they have a clear vision as well of where they can go to take their reading and writing beyond and really have that joy and that excitement around stories and books and creating their own stories as well. So the morning meeting is a really lovely, strong routine you can build in. Here's a list of some of the wonderful things about the morning meeting and what it can do for a classroom, but really so important to set the tone for the day, building up trust, inclusion, cooperation. Students are working on their communication skills, getting a chance to listen to each other, ask questions, talk, and share. And it can be a consistent routine we do every day, but then vary it up with how and what we're sharing and what we're focusing on every day. So the format, and this is again in that book, The First 6 Weeks of School, the format is a greeting, and then we do some sharing. There's a group activity, and then the teacher shares news and announcements. So the greeting could be a fist bump, handshake, high five, could be a dance move, anything that works for your kids, and giving them choice is nice. So they can pick and be in their comfort zone, doing some sharing, some news of interest, responding to what's happening, what you're working on in the class. But in September, for sure, a really nice thing to share out on is something important and meaningful or memorable from our summer vacation. And then doing a group activity together, which can be a nice time to dip into some word play, word games, using the things in your room, your word wall, I Spy, for the students to get to know each other and their names a little bit. So playing the name game, things like that to get them more familiar with each other, with some of that environmental print around the classroom and some of the routines around literacy that will really support those skills going forward. And the announcement might be something as simple as a morning message we've written on the board. That's just a couple of sentences giving them that heads up for what's happening in the day. So we started to do a little bit of a greeting as you were coming in. If you came in before our kickoff, we asked you to enter your where you are and what you're teaching this year. So that was a little bit of a connection. And probably if you're like us, you skimmed through the chat box to see how many other people are teaching your grade, or if there's anyone else from your part of the province in there. And we're going to build on that a little more right now that we're all together. And so what we're going to ask you to do is, if you can share a favorite memory from your summer break and type that into the chat box and share it for everyone to see. So my example there is a road trip with my friends. Hopefully you got around and explored the province. I'm not too sure if many people had opportunities to leave the province, but good thing BC is beautiful and big. So I'll get you to write that now and share it in the chat box. Oh, Kelly, I hugged my mom for the first time on June 14th. I will remember the day for sure. Beach in Parksville, Cumberland. Oh, someone got to Ontario. Jen, how did I not know you bought a boat?
She's so cute. It's a little classic yellow boat. I have to show you a picture.
Yes. Oh, Kettle River. I love Kettle River. Yes. Camping, moving. Oh my gosh.
Oh, lots of people talking about their
Yeah.
families, seeing their families, spending time. Oh, someone got married, Meg, in Nelson.
Beautiful. All right, so if we were together in a room, I would have you turn to the person next to you and you would have done the sharing just one-on-one with a neighbor, and then you could comment and respond. So because we're all virtual, we're spread out around the province, what I'll ask you to do, like we've done, just scroll through other people's shares of their favorite memory from the summer and find one that you have that resonates with you, that you have a connection to. So for me, just like I did with Kelly, I hugged my mom too, and that was really special. So that was a connection I made with Kelly. So, but you might have also gone to Parksville, and you could comment and type in there and say, hey, Lori, I went to Parksville too, or my parents live there, or my best friend lives there. And just see if you can find a connection and add that in the chat box. So you're reaching out and connecting with someone. And this will give us a really nice sense of all of the shared connections that we have. And you can see how this could work if we were actually all in the same room. Thanks, Jen, for starting us off there. Oh, and Leanna is giving a message to Kim. For me, I'm connecting just in general about how many people were doing outdoorsy active things. Yeah.
Lots of camping, floating in the river.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, how cool.
Yeah, water and beaches, so lovely. Well, thank you so much for participating and for sharing. It does really help Jen and I feel like we're getting to know you a little bit, because we only have this hour together, but you can imagine the power and the gift of this with your students, who then are going to just keep coming back and be with you all year, and they can bond with each other over things that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise found out that they had in common, maybe about their travels or their family or the activities they did over the summer. And if someone did something that you're interested in that you'd like to do, but you haven't yet, then maybe you'd get a chance to talk to them about that. So Karen there's talking to Vina about, biking the seawall at Stanley Park. Oh, Michelle hiked at Wanda Fuca. Oh, amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. That was a lovely way to connect with people across the province. Yes, so let's take a look at the resource that Lisa mentioned earlier, the first 6 weeks of school. The authors really focused on the first 6 weeks as being a time to create this climate for our students that's welcoming and safe, a lot of routine-based instruction and behavior expectations, getting students to know and care for their classroom so that they get to take ownership and pride in the place where they're going to be spending a lot of time throughout the year. So I feel from my time that I was a teacher and working with teachers that the first 6 weeks can be quite overwhelming for both our students and for ourselves as teachers. So the more that we can focus on these kind of areas to really build up with our students, I think it alleviates some of the stress from getting academic work off the ground really quickly, because we know that setting up those routines is so important, and it's going to set us up for success and our students up for success for the rest of the year. So one of the ways that we can do that is by co-creating spaces and routines with our students, so that, again, they have a sense of belonging, part of a community, and ownership for the space and what happens in that space. So I relate it to flying with Air Canada. So why do we need to set up routines really quickly? So that our students, as Lisa mentioned, feel safe coming to school, know what's going to happen, and it's not as stressful for them. So it decreases anxiety. When we consider flying on Air Canada, if you aren't a frequent flyer with Air Canada, or you are used to flying it with a different airline, perhaps even outside of the country, it might be very strange for you to understand that there's different lineups that you have to go into depending on your zone number. Where do you find your zone number? It's on your boarding pass. That tells you when you can line up and when you can start boarding. How to find your seat. So that when we're looking for our seat, we're quick about it. We're into the aisle and or out of the aisle as quickly as we can, so that there's not a big lineup behind us. What do we do with our luggage? Well, if it doesn't fit in the overhead compartment, which nowadays it very rarely does, it goes underneath the seat in front of you. And of course, that you have to take off your headphones during the safety demo, because a lot of people would not know that, because that's a kind of an Air Canada thing or a Canadian airline thing. So all of those things can cause a lot of stress if you're not anticipating them and you don't know what the routine is for flying with Air Canada. But our frequent flyers, they get on, they know exactly where they're supposed to line up, they know how long it's going to take, they know where to put their luggage, how to find their seat, headphone rules. Because they're frequent flyers, they enjoy that experience much more, and it's not stressful, quite enjoyable, and they can enjoy the procedure of it rather than having to have it be a stressful time for them. So what we want for our students is to become frequent flyers in our classrooms, so they don't have to think so hard about what's coming up next. They can enjoy the space, they can enjoy being in our classroom and learning. So it opens up a lot of mental energy so that they can learn. So one of the ways that we can do that is by setting up our classroom with spaces in mind that are going to make our students feel comfortable, safe. They know where they're supposed to go at certain times. So usually we would have a mini lesson area that we're going to pull students towards. There's areas for diverse abilities. There's a quiet area that students can go to if they need to have some self-regulation time. Areas for centers or stations where students can kind of, go to different areas of the classroom and not be all bunched together. Classroom library, that's huge. Huge in our classrooms, in primary classrooms. So what we would love to know, since we can't visit all of your classrooms right now, is what is your favorite area of your classroom and why is it your favorite? So I'm going to give you a 1-minute timer, and we will get to see a little bit more about all of your classrooms. I love this part, kind of like a little sneak peek. So you can write your favorite area and what's your favorite in the chat box. And we'll take a look at those after 1 minute. Excellent. I was just reading through your wonderful comments. I feel like I can see into your classroom, and feel your excitement for all of the different areas. A lot of you mentioned the carpet area, a place to gather. A lot of you mentioned areas of collaboration, and oh, a nature station. That sounds really, really great. And a lot of people mentioned areas to calm down, whether that's connected to the classroom library or, or a reading area. But I love, just the quiet reading corners that people have described for those who need a break, a calm down, but it's comfortable, it's cozy. Excellent. This is really great. Thank you so much for sharing your areas with all of us. Like, what I get out of it is those are the places that are central to our classroom, where there's connection, where students can be safe and comfortable. So when we're designing our student spaces at this age, at about a grade 2-3 age, it's really great if our areas reflect the interests of our students, and if somehow we could have them co-create areas with us. So we can have student work on the wall, flexible seating. I'm not sure the rules on flexible seating right now with COVID, but I know that that was a hard thing for people last year to not have. But just places where students can take ownership and feel like they belong, have them involved in the cleanup schedule so that they can take pride in the area that they have. So what is important is to remember that a warm, open space feels more welcoming to students than a very busy Pinterest classroom. So don't go the Pinterest way. I know it's tempting, it looks beautiful, but it's a lot of work, and your students don't necessarily often take part in that. So it's okay. Put the Pinterest aside and just enjoy your space with your kiddos. Okay, so another way that you can really set up that classroom community as a place for students to be a part of the routines and the expectations is by having something like this hopes and dreams planning sheet. So really noticing, and I'm going to have you choose one question to answer in the chat box. So as I'm explaining through, feel free to do that. But you can have students really focus on what they enjoyed the previous year, what challenges they had, some goals that they have for the year, and what's one goal that they'd especially like to work on. Now, by setting this up like this, we're really getting a good idea about our students individually, who they are in our classroom, but also who is our classroom community. So what are our collective beliefs? What are our collective goals? So that we can start to build that up together. So if you had an answer that you'd like to answer in the chat box, that would be awesome. I'm going to keep going with time's sake, but love to hear from you.
I'll jump in here too, Jen. I know back in the pre-COVID day, something like this could have been something that my class could have done with their big buddy class. So the big buddies could have maybe sort of interviewed the students and written down their answers. Also, another thing, it might be something nice to send home and have the parents have that discussion and ask their child the question. So it gives them a little bit of insight into their students, their child's attitudes, and what they feel they did successful at, and what's a concern or a worry for them. So it gives them some information and a bond, as well as sharing that information with us for us to use in how we choose to support our students and design our classroom.
Oh, fantastic ideas. Yes, for sure. Thanks for jumping in. So when we have our students fill out that sheet, however it works for your kiddos, then we can come together and see what we value collectively and what our collective goals are. So what are some rules that could help us work together so that we can reach our goals? So it's a kind of a flip on setting up classroom expectations first, and then then relaying them to students. But this way, we're involving our students and providing a reason for us to have some rules in our classroom, because we want our students to reach their goals. So it's putting a positive spin on how we can meet our goals and how we can work together to help other people meet their goals. So after brainstorming the rules and revisiting them a few times throughout a couple of weeks so that it's not, so it's a living, breathing document in your classroom, you could have this agreement or classroom contract or classroom expectations, whatever you want to call it, in a visible area and have students sign their name to it, so that it's a collective agreement that was co-written, co-decided, and then committed to from everyone in the classroom. So I'm going to show you one other way of co-creating classroom community expectations through this video, just so you have some choice, some ideas. So we have these expectations set up. What we want to remember is that if we set them up like proactively with our students through using positive teacher language, then we can be more, we can set them up for success rather than it be really directive and policing them, I guess I'm going to say, through their learning the expectations. So I'll give you a couple of situations here. So as students arrive, you can say things like, Robert, I saw you help Maggie out with her backpack. That was kind. So positive behavior and a consequence, like he did a, he had a kind action that impacted someone else in the class. During math, Manuel, you look ready for our math activity. Your eyes are on me and your hands are still. So being very concrete about how he looks ready for the lesson. And before our transition, class, we're about to transition from the circle area to the table groups. What are some of our ideas of how we can move safely? So inviting people, our students, into the routine, have them voice how things are done safely, and then have them practice right afterwards. So some of the ways that we can really kind of change or adapt our language so that it's putting our students in the situation of a successful experience when they are going through the routine. All right, I'm going to hand this over to Lisa.
All right. The one thing I really liked about that video, the teacher talking about co-creating the classroom expectations, is that the kids were invited and allowed to say what their expectations were for the teacher.
Yeah.
Like if I think, how many times did a teacher ask me in elementary how I wanted them to treat me? That was not on the menu of options. So I think that's really nice too for the kids. And yeah, just thoughtful. So Nadia put the link for that YouTube video in the chat box. If you are interested in tracking it down, just so you have a copy of it, you can click on the link in the chat box. And we wanted to share this lovely read aloud called The Day You Begin. And it kind of launches on what we've been talking about earlier, coming in and feeling unsure of what to do and finding your voice. And then all the ways that you can figure out by getting to know the other people in your class, I guess in this workshop, finding out what you have in common with each other and the connections and how important that is to give us a sense of belonging and ease so that we can relax and feel that part of the classroom community. So I'm going to skip ahead at 2 parts just to shorten this up a little bit because we do just have a bit of time here, but we will have a listen to this. And what I invite you to think about as we're reading this story, what are a few of the personal and social identifiers that make you you? So as you hear the characters in the story talking about what makes them them and how they're different, we can look at that, what makes us special and unique. And if you think of some of the things for you, we encourage you to enter those into the chat box, and then we'll talk about that a little bit after the book. And that really is one of those tools that will help us get to know our students. So Carol Ann Tomlinson, she is the premier expert around the world on differentiated learning. And this is her quote: "To teach a student well, a teacher must know that student well." So all of this information we're collecting about our students, just like formative assessment information, giving us insights into where they're at with their learning, for us to be a seeing teacher and get to know our students, part of that is their personalities, what they might be anxious or nervous about, their learning preferences, learning styles, what their hopes and dreams are. And then looking at what they do and say and what they need and how they act in their learning as well, to give us that really well-rounded sense of who they are and what they might need from us to move them forward as learners and as people, and also as literacy learners and as young readers and writers. This is a checklist we created. It's available on our website in our assessment section, and it's called Something You Know. And this is a way for us to track for ourselves, listing our students' names from our class and being able to jot down something we know about them that isn't related to school. And then the second step of that is that column on the right. Are we sure that the child knows we know that about them? Because we might know things, but if they don't know that, there's maybe a piece of connection missing there. So that's another way for us to strengthen our connection with each of our children in the classroom, to find something where we can see them beyond being a student, and how they are as a citizen and a human in the world, in their life outside of the classroom. And this is a summary of Shelley Moore's work on inclusion, which leads to belonging and success, as we all know. So just these 6 questions here around inclusion. So what is it? Who are our learners? What are our goals? How can we teach to all learners? How can we support all learners? And how can we celebrate progress? So some considerations and things that are likely on everyone's mind at the beginning of the year. And this last little bit I'm going to share with you is some of John Hattie's work on teacher behaviors and things that have a high impact on student learning. So he's done tons of research and meta-analyses of thousands and thousands and thousands of students around the world. And so he's really a data and statistics expert. And he's put out lots of books and research, and it's quite dry. So here in Poppy Land, we tried to pull out the essence of it. So here are 5 or 6 things that impact student learning. So they're just kind of here scrambled in no particular order. And what we'd like you to do is guess what you think has the biggest impact on student learning, and enter that into the chat box. So I'll just give us maybe 30 seconds here. Do we have some guesses there, Jen?
Not yet. Oh, relationship just popped up.
Thanks, Chelsea. Anybody else want to hazard a guess?
Community.
Community.
Relationship, community, connection, student-teacher connection. Yeah, relationships, belonging.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So you see it's that one there in the bottom left here, teacher subject matter knowledge. Nobody's picked that, although that really is such a key part of our job. But I think we all know it really is more about the connections and the relationship. Yeah. So I'll just show you here on this next one. Here they are in order, going from lowest to highest impact on student achievement. So that teacher subject matter knowledge really has a low impact. Strong classroom community, quite a bit higher there. Student-teacher relationship, student effort. Look at that, classroom discussion. How many of you would have pegged that being in the top 3? Providing formative assessment, and there we go at the top, teacher estimates of student achievement. So our estimates, our expectations, our opinions, our mindsets around our individual students and what they're capable of, huge, huge, huge impact on their achievement. So you can imagine if we have high, positive, hopeful estimates of student achievement, they will live and work toward that expectation. And just like if we have low expectations of them, that's where they're going to end up sort of sitting, and they may not be living up to their potential because they need us to believe in them, to help them believe in themselves. So I will leave you with that tidbit as Jen takes over and takes us into the home.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to switch gears and take a look at some of the structures and routines that we can set up that are kind of consistent throughout the day that our students can come to rely on and expect in our classroom. So one of them is to really think about how to have those authentic conversations with our students so that they, first of all, like develop all those oral language skills that we know that are so important to literacy, but also to have them be part of a classroom community where their voice is heard and honored. So one of them is the morning meeting, which Lisa did an amazing job of talking about at the beginning of our presentation today. I'll just quickly touch on the other two. So weekly picnic lunch, this came from an idea, this idea came from a colleague who every Friday they would have their picnic lunch. They would go to the multi-purpose room or outside, depending on the weather, and they would all gather around a table or in a circle. And they would practice talking. They would have practice having authentic conversations. So this would be scaffolded. So if a student was talking about their new guinea pig, and one of the students said that they had tacos for dinner last night, then it could be redirected. Well, right now we're talking about Jenny's new guinea pig. Do you have a question or a comment about that? So just reinforcing those discussion skills. And then the closing circle is a really great way for us to end on a positive note, to calmly at the end of the day make time and value each student saying something that they enjoyed about the day, and practicing listening to each other, practicing speaking clearly, and ending our class on a positive note. This one, Breathe Like a Bear, is one of our favorite books, and it's really set up to change the energy of our class. So I'm going to let you go through one of the activities in this book, and you can see there's many different ways that we can change the energy. We can calm students down, we can get them focused, we can get them energized, depending on how we want to work with our students. So these are great areas to focus on or to bring about in our classroom throughout the day. So you can see how quickly that can change the energy in the classroom. It's just 1 minute, but it is a great movement break for our students and a great focus break. So another routine that we can set up for our students to be successful with literacy in mind is reading and writing workshops, where they can come to expect that they will gather for a mini lesson, a focus lesson at the beginning of the time to get the workshop time, that they will have some independent time afterwards to practice what they learned in the mini lesson and to have some independent time. This is also a time where teachers can be working with small groups, conferencing. Students could be working on their own or working with a partner or working in a group, but it's more about just that independent time that they are following, that they aren't being teacher directed at that time necessarily. And then coming back together for a sharing or a celebration to wrap up, to revisit, to remind students what the focus of the lesson was. So the mini lesson format is actually very quick. We want it to be snappy. We want to be high impact, but this is a whole group activity where, generally it's a whole group activity where we have a connection to what they've already learned, some teaching, some active engagement for students to practice. So it's going from that direct explicit instruction to a guided practice. And then they have some independent practice time in their in the big, large part of the reading workshop, reading or writing workshop, and then a link to what they're going to do in the future. So I'm going to show you a short video. I think I'm going to just show you a little bit of it because of time, but you can get a really good idea about that connection and teaching part from this teacher. So when we're setting up that independent work time for our students, just to have that really successful experience for our students, we want to be really consistent with our expectations, even if it means shorter amounts of time that we give our students that we expect our students to be independent. So we can start that very small, very short amounts of time, and then build up independent stamina, one of those words. And you can use a chart to track this, get students really involved in the process. And when students start to go outside of those expectations or outside of the behavioral expectations for working independently, we can return to the whole group area, talk about it, see what the students notice, and then talk about what we need to do differently tomorrow. So involve them in the process of setting up those expectations. And keep trying the next day, the next day, the next day, and be excited even when you can go 1 minute longer with your independent time. Okay, so to close us off today, close the presentation today, we are going to have a closing circle around 6-word stories. Now, 6-word stories are brilliant at any age, kindergarten to, or grade 1 to grade 12, because they're focused, they're concise, and you don't have to think too much about them. You can just kind of, you know, go with your gut, go with your feelings, and write something that you don't have to critique too much. So here are some 6-word stories about how you want your students, how you might want your students to feel this year. And we're going to invite you to write your own 6-word story and put it into the chat box if you'd like. So here are some examples. Excited and safe, calm and curious, kind, confident, full of inquisitive joy. That's like a triple scoop word. Safe to wonder, discover, question, explore. Hopeful, helpful, safe, sense of belonging. So we'll invite you to write your own 6-word story and share it in the chat box. And remember, just, you know, no pressure, just relax and have fun with how you want your students to feel this year. So I'm going to keep going, but I hope that these are coming into the chat box very, very soon. And look at this wonderful quote that is all about these wonderful, very, very powerful words. Things like nurturing, culturally responsive, identity safe, relationship filled. These are the words that we want our students to, these are the feelings that we want our students to have when they're invited into our classroom community. When they get that sense of belonging, they get excited to be in our class with their peers this year. And I don't know, just hold on to that quote and hold on to the fact that we can do our best job to just make them feel safe and happy and relaxed in our classrooms. Okay, so here are the resources that we use to build your presentation today. If there's anything interesting there, check it out. Also, there's links that Nadja was putting into the chat box throughout, so you can check those out. There is our contact information. So please let us know how things are going. If you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. And we're going to leave you with an inspirational book as our last thing today, if you can stick around. But we just really appreciate this after school workshop and spending this time with you, and wish you all the best with your kiddos this year, and hope that you'll keep in touch.